Okay, that's gonna be difficult.
All right, I think we'll be ready. Let's see that time, do it every time. I think it's around the shoulder. Okay, I'm going to share the screen.
Thanks for that. I'm almost 90% certain.
We are ready to get going.
Good afternoon, everybody.
Good afternoon, Ms. Bullock.
Welcome to the Policy Committee. We have, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 11, 12, 13, 14 policies that we need to discuss, but 2 of them were inadvertently left off of the agenda. So I need a motion to amend the agenda to add policy 3102 and policy 3300 to the agenda for today.
So move, Madam Chair.
Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that we add policy 3102 and policy 3300 to our agenda for this evening. Is there any discussion?
Madam Chair, quickly regarding that agenda, should we call out who made the motion, who seconded, because there's no visible there?
You're right, you're correct.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. The motion by Mr. Sharp, seconded by Mr. Dutton to add policy 3102 and 3300 to the agenda. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye. Aye, Bill Sharp.
Opposed, no. Motion carried. So we will add policy 3102 and 3300 to the agenda. Now, is there a motion to approve the agenda as amended?
Madam Chair, I make the motion, we approve the agenda as amended.
Second.
Identify yourself, and then I won't need to.
Madam Chair, this is Bill Sharp. I make a motion that we approve the agenda as amended.
Thank you, sir. Is there a second?
Second, Mike Dutton.
It's been moved and seconded that we approve the agenda as amended. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye, Bill Sharp.
Opposed, no. And aye for me, motion carried. The next item on the agenda are the meeting minutes, and we've had the minutes. Do we have any corrections or additions to the minutes? If not, the minutes will stand approved as presented. The next item on the agenda is the policy updates. And for that, I turn to Dr. Catalano.
Okay, or afternoon, I guess, late afternoon. We're going to start with policy 1510, school safety. And we have Mr. Leon Farrow here to share with us what the updates are with that policy.
Can I ask, somebody is moving papers or something? There's a lot of noise. Thank you. Now, Ms. Catalano.
Okay, Mr. Farrow, I think I accidentally muted you. You can unmute and go ahead
And
and
you
share.
muted me as well.
I apologize. I was trying to get rid of the paper sound.
Okay. Is Mr. Fire still muted?
Can you hear me now?
We can
Yes.
hear you.
So for school safety, policy 1510, there was a temporary addition added that aimed at preventing the spread of 19. Superintendent's designee is responsible for collaborating with the health department to establish the safety guidelines and protocol that are aligned to the North Carolina Department of Health and Human Services requirements for all individuals entering school grounds and facilities. This will remain in effect until repealed by the board or the North Carolina Department of Health and Human Services. It also added the state superintendent as a when reporting criminal activity. It deleted the repealed bullying, harassment, and discrimination policies and added the new policies which replaced the repealed ones. And there's an updated cross-reference. Are there any questions for me on this particular one?
Are there questions? If not, next policy.
And the next policy we have is Code of Ethics for board members, policy 2120. I failed to mention that these are all school board association policy recommendations. In this particular one, the change was made to number 13, which references policy 2121 board member conflict of interest, which is also in policy revision as well. It adds subsection B13. It says 14 in the that stating that the board member will not influence any personnel matter pertaining to the board member's spouse's employment with the school system. And then it updated the cross-reference to policy 2121 as well.
Can we just go over that real quickly, please?
Yes, sir. I think it may be helpful to go over 2121 also, because that is the reason for the change in 2120. So,
right. I think we got, Madam Chair, I think we got some pertinent information or pertinent data that's associated with it. We just need to make sure we cover it because there's applicable cases on the board.
All right, go ahead, Mr. Sharp. Well, let's look at 2121 along with 2120. Can we do that? Because they really are about the same thing.
Works for me.
Chris, go ahead with 2121 and then we'll do questions and go back and forth from each one.
okay, got you. So this one's 21, board member conflict of interest. This revises the last sentence in this paragraph here, which states a board member derives a direct benefit. Okay, no, I'm sorry. An exception is allowed for employment contracts between the board and spouse of the board. However, here's the change. The board member involved will not, one, deliberate or vote on the spouse's employment contract, or two, attempt to influence any other person who is involved in making or administering the contract, or three, participate in, deliberate on, vote on, or attempt to influence any person with respect to any other matter pertaining to the board member's spouse's employment with the school system, including but not limited to hiring, contractual renewal, transfer, promotion, demotion, suspension, discipline, performance evaluation or review, or investigation of a complaint of any kind. And again, that was a school board association recommended change And the note there says, with guidance from the board attorney, the board could alternatively expand this provision to pertain to any member of the board, any board member's family, immediate family. If the board does do so, it should make a corresponding change to the policy 21. And I believe that was, yeah. So that's the change in 21-20, 21-21, I'm sorry. And then 21-20 references that change, adding the reference to policy 21-20 with the spouse.
And my question would be pertaining to that note, why would we just stop at the spouse? I think it should include immediate family. And is that not included in the law, Lindsay?
Yeah, typically immediate family is in the my memory of the conflict of interest statutes has immediate family in there as well. And many of the policies have immediate family as well. Although I would say if you're going to change, so they updated the last sentence. So if, Chris, if you go back to 21-21. So the question is, so if you scroll up a little bit, Chris, they added subsection 3, which talks about expands the extent to which board members may attempt to influence specific types, specific issues regarding the employment. So if the board wants to recommend, or the committee wants to recommend to the board that they expand this to include members of the immediate family, you would also want to change number 1 and number 2, I would think, or at least in order to be consistent. So that last sentence would read, however, the board member involved will not, 1, deliberate or vote on the immediate family member's employment contract, 2, attempt to influence any other person who is involved with making or administering that contract, or 3, and then going on. So that's all I would say, is just wanted to flag that as well for the committee.
Madam Chair, if I
Yes.
may.
Yes,
Well,
sir.
that's one of the reasons why I want to review that, because basically it just relates to the spouse. And I think we need to talk more than just the spouse. And I
Right.
don't necessarily immediate family. I would rather prefer to say the family, because immediate family is just those 1 and 2, maybe 1 and second, but you might be second or third D. Anything that's related to a family member, I think we need to cover it.
But I think we need to stay with what the statute.
And I'm good with it.
I think when you bring it into just family, there would be cases where that could be very wide ranging.
Yeah, that could be third cousin twice removed, depending upon how close they are.
Sure.
You know, how close the relationship is.
Right.
I think immediate family would cover what we need to be concerned with.
And I'm fine with that. I was just, and like did make a point, it may be long distance, but family is family. So if any type of family member, whether it's first, second, third, or 9th degree in turn, if you're impacting it, it still have an impact.
Okay. We can, Lindsay, help me out with this. We cannot legally, well, I guess we could though. I started to say we can't legally add something in here that the statute actually does not, but I guess we could, if we wanted to expand it, we could. Is that correct?
That's correct.
But I think we need to we need to be consistent with what the statute states. And I think the statute uses the term immediate family.
I'm good with that, Madam Chair. I just want to bring that point up.
Okay, good point.
Thank you.
I would support that.
Okay. Are there other questions? Donovan, are you there? Okay. Next policy then, Chris.
Okay, let me save the changes to this one. So this is, we just changed it in 2210, changed spouse to immediate family. And we need to also change it in policy 21. Nope.
2120 and 2121.
Yes. Okay. So we changed it in 2121. Does this one say yes? So we will need to say the board, employment with the board. Oh, that's a lot of boards. Okay.
Yeah.
With respect to any matter pertaining to the employment with the board of the board members'
Immediate family.
Including but not limited to, okay, and I think that's the only place where it's mentioned there. So those are the changes that we wanted to make.
Yes.
Okay. Those are complete. Policy 3000 then, goals and objectives of the education program. The only change that was made here was to the accrediting agency. Advanced Ed was bought out by Cognia, and so it just took out the company Advanced Ed and replaced it with a new name, which is Cognia. And that is the only change in this policy.
Other questions? Okay, next policy, Chris.
All right, the next policy is policy 3102, online instruction, and I believe we have Danny Plyler here to talk through those recommended changes as well.
Good afternoon, board members. We have added a section here, section B on this policy, which reads, when warranted by exigent circumstances and where authorized by law, schools may conduct classes remotely for all or part of a school year. Board policies remain in effect during periods of remote learning, except that the board reserves the right to deviate from any policy when adherence is impossible or impractical under the circumstances and the deviation is not inconsistent with law. To the extent practicable or when required by law, affected employees, students, and parents or guardians will be notified of the change in advance. So just basically covering where we are now doing our remote instruction, adding that to the policy.
All right, are there questions? Okay.
Right.
Next policy.
Next policy is school calendar and time for learning. I believe that we have, I don't know why that didn't show up in red, but I believe we have Robin Griffin here to talk through.
Yes, the only adjustment to this one is a one-time adjustment for the 2021 school year, according to session law 2020-49. And basically that one refers to the 5 remote learning days that are required for this year and the additional days at the beginning of the school year that we had to have. So we have, our calendars meet those guidelines, and at this point it only applies to 2021. So I see no adjustments that need to be made.
Chris, will you scroll down this policy? Hold on, one of these policies. Okay, this is the one. Under section C, and this is strictly wordsmithing.
Okay.
That first statement under C, should there not be, it reads now, schools operating under a modified calendar, the opening date for students will be no earlier than the Monday, whatever. But should it not be for schools operating under a modified calendar, the opening date, whatever? It doesn't make sense.
I think it
grammatically.
actually reads like a bulleted list, even though there are no bullets. So I think you'd be fine putting the word for there, but it actually reads as a bulleted list, even though there are no bullets.
Well, if it's going to read like a bulletin list, then it should have bullets. Because it doesn't read grammatically correct the way it is. From my perspective. Does anybody disagree with that?
I don't disagree, but I'm no teacher.
Well, I'm not a teacher either.
But you've been doing good, Miss Bullet, with it. I can't argue that point. That's good. It sounds right to me.
Okay.
What's,
There was one other point, but I forgot where it is right now, and I didn't have time to jot it down. But that was the one that was really, that really grabbed my attention. Okay. Any other questions?
No, ma'am.
none for me.
Then the next policy.
Okay, the next policy is 4001. This is equal educational opportunities. And this made revisions to the first paragraph to clarify the board's obligations under state and federal law to provide equal education opportunities. That was a recommended change. A required change was the similar to the student safety or the school safety changes. All of those Title IX policy adjustments that we made in our last meeting, the references are changed in here. So the reference for discrimination, harassment, Title IX non-discrimination, and non-discrimination on the basis of disabilities, and student and parent grievance procedures were referenced, referencing the new policies.
Okay. Are there questions? Next policy.
Okay, the next policy is staff-student relations, policy 4040. And I believe we've got Sheila Wallace here to talk through those changes for us.
Can you scroll down, Chris?
Okay.
There's only one change to this policy, and is due to the COVID pandemic that we are living through. It basically is allowing us to conduct video conferencing platforms using Zoom, WebEx, Google Meet, that has been approved by the superintendent or designee for instructional uses, and the communications of how often they will occur. I think that is the only change in this policy.
Which policy was this? What's the name
This
of
is
this
the one
policy?
for staff and
40,
student.
40. Policy 4040.
Yeah, what's the, yeah,
/.
what's the title? What is it? How's the read title read?
Staff student relations.
Okay. And what does this got to do with Zoom?
It's basically allowing us, because we're in COVID and we're not violating any of the principles with video or using forms of social media to communicate with students. But because we're in a virtual mode, we have to use those learning platforms in order to communicate the instructional activities to the students daily.
So the basic purpose of this policy is to differentiate from an admin person having a conversation through social media. But through COVID, this COVID situation that we're dealing with now, it allows admin to deal with students through this media of Zoom. Is that what I'm hearing?
It allows the teachers to instruct using the Zoom or Webinex or webinar type platforms.
And does it spell out instruct?
Let's see.
I'm sorry, it talks about
Education
communication for
purpose.
education. Yes, go ahead. Sorry, Sheila.
That's fine.
But essentially, this policy restricts electronic communication. It says that staff are not allowed to communicate with
That's
students for
right.
various reasons, unless these things in section B, or I'm sorry, these things on number 3 are allowed. And so it adds that teachers can conduct video conferencing with students for educational purposes.
Because prior to COVID, we didn't have that.
It wasn't allowed in policy.
Right.
And that's exactly what my point of reference was. Basically, we didn't have any social communication with our students prior to COVID. Now, because of COVID, the only social communication that we do have is for instructional purpose through Zoom or WebEx, whatever media that we're using. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yes.
Okay.
Because it says up there in 1, an A, it says the communication is for an educational purpose. It's not it's not giving permission for the teacher to go on Zoom and have just a conversation with the student, because Zoom is available even under COVID.
So let me ask. So let me ask this question. So if I'm an instructor and I got a lesson or whatever that Miss Bullock wasn't in class that day, and I want to communicate to her what she missed out on class, I couldn't have did that before COVID. Is that what I'm hearing?
That's correct. Not using any of these platforms you could not have.
But now it gives us access
Telephone,
to
email, something of that nature.
But now it gives us access because of COVID to have these type of communications.
Correct.
Okay, that's what I thought.
And it still has to be educational.
Well, Ms. Bullock, here anybody can say educational. You know, I'm calling you to tell you you missed out on a classroom assignment. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So that's what I'm saying. Educational to me can be just, but I'm good with that. I'm good. I just want to clarify it. Thank you.
What you're looking at though is whether educational or instructional would be the proper word to use. Are you not? Is that what you're questioning?
Yes, ma'am.
And see, I would use the words interchangeably.
Okay.
But is that what do you think, Lank?
Well, I think the important piece is where it states a school system provided platform which archives communication for 3 years. So you can't do it. If what Bill, I think, is getting at is through social media or some other electronic platform, it states very clearly, educational purposes on a platform provided by the school where the data is archived, and then it names, Zoom, WebEx, Google Meet as, I guess, options.
And that's exactly right. And I'm good with that. I ain't gonna tie everybody else, tie people up.
Are there other questions? All right, next policy.
All right, next policy is policy 4400, and this one again has temporary changes. We have Mr. Farrow here to talk through those.
Policy 4400, attendance. In the very first line of the policies, there was a minor change that began a sentence to school attendance and class participation. If you go down a little bit further in the policy, you'll see that it describes how attendance is taken on remote instruction days. Again, this is another one of those temporary rules that have been put in place because of COVID-19 and will remain in effect until it's replaced by the Board of Education or North Carolina Department of Public Instruction. I want to read through what the rules are for the remote learning days. It says is to be counted present during remote instruction days, students must either complete their daily assignments either online or offline. Number two, have a daily check-in through two-way communication with a homeroom teacher for grades K-5. And there we may want to take that homeroom teacher out, Dr. Galano, and just put classroom teacher, or at least add classroom teacher to it, because I don't know that our K-5s is reporting that through a homeroom teacher. And the course teacher for all other grade levels. This temporary rule will remain in effect until repealed by the board, until the applicable guidance from the North Carolina Department of Public Instruction is rescinded, whichever occurs first.
Let me ask a question. If the student does not participate during the time that the teacher is actually doing instruction, but does the goes online later that day or even that evening and does his work, that will have him present for that day. Is that what I'm reading?
Yes, ma'am, that's correct.
Okay. Okay.
Ms. Bullock,
Yes, sir.
Chris Bissett here. I'd like to clarify that right there for section 1, complete their daily assignments. What time frame are we giving them? Because we're hearing from a lot of teachers now that kids will go for weeks upon weeks, and as long as they turn their work in, it's graded and it's counted as present. It may be 2 to 3 weeks late.
Well, that is a time frame that's decided within that school based on the conversation, the dialogue that the principals have had with their staff in terms of what the time frame is for turning in work. I do know that that Ms. Nancy Smith and Mr. Thompson tried to have some consistency between the grade levels, but if a school says that you have 5 days to turn your work in, then that means that those students have those 5 days. And if they complete their work within that time frame, then they are counted present for those days.
What happens if they don't turn it in, but say on the 6th day?
So if they don't turn it in within the time frame and they have not contacted a teacher, had two-way communication, or they did not show up in the actual virtual setting, then that child would be counted absent.
Would his completed work be counted?
If he turned it in that time frame.
But I'm asking if he doesn't.
And I don't know the
Ms. Bullock, I can answer that for you. You've got kids turning in their work at the end of the grading period saying, I forgot to do it, and the schools are giving them credit. And that's not fair to the kids that did their work on time, in my opinion.
Well,
that is a principle, because the principal reserved the right to grade and classify. And that is a principal right if they decide to extend completion time for work. But in terms of the attendance, a child is counted present if they turn their work within that time frame that has been given.
So I guess we're looking at 2 different things in my thought.
Right.
Is attendance plus grading.
Right. That's what it sounds like to me.
Evelyn, Donovan is here in the room with us now and would like to make things.
Yeah, I'm glad that you all are specifying what attendance is versus being counted, work counted toward a grade. I've been an online student for almost 6 years. You have so many days to turn in your deadline to be counted present for the class. However, in my case, if I'm late, then points start coming off, like 20% off after the 5th day. I may have done the work, but I'm not gonna get full credit if I have not met that deadline. However, it is imperative that the work drives the attendance, because there are some parents sitting there with 3 kids and they are expected to be in front of 3 different teachers at 10 o'clock, and that's literally impossible in one household. So it does give that parent the opportunity to work with the second child at a later time and get that work turned in. And I've gotten hit today by 2 different parents that were dealing with that same kind of issue.
Okay. Well, now I'm okay with giving credit for work done, even if it does come in late. I just need it for me in case I were asked about it. What the actual conditions are, what happens if you do this or if you don't do this. That was just for a point of information for me. I'm not at all suggesting that we change the wording. I just needed to make sure I understood the wording.
Well, Mr. Farrow, this is
Yes, sir.
Would it read, or would it help any, I guess, if for point 1 there, it said complete their daily assignments within an assigned time frame, or not just that they complete the assignment, but that it has to be completed by whatever the set deadline is?
Yes, I don't think that there's an issue with that being there. I would like to talk with Ms. Nancy Smith and Mr. Thompson about that wording as well. But based on the conversation and the discussions that we've had, I don't see that would be a problem.
The language that the School Board Association used here was lifted directly from the Department of Public Instruction's guidance and their policy, the temporary policy around attendance. So that they didn't quantify what that daily, the length of time. Yeah.
But that doesn't stop us, Chris, from making that change.
I agree.
Right. Lindsay has unmuted her phone.
That's what I was going to say. What Chris just mentioned, that that this is just the language that is directly from the Board of Education's policy, or temporary policy and guidance. But you're right. I don't know that it necessarily that would not tie your hands from further clarifying the length of time.
Yeah, we can tweak it for our local purposes. And I agree that it would be clearer if we actually added designated time or something to show that you don't have forever to get it done.
Or that all you have to do is turn it in. You have to turn it in.
And right now, the way it reads, you're correct. It sounds like you've got till whenever you decide to do it, which is not actually true from what I'm hearing.
So,
To be counted present. And that's what we're talking about, to be counted present.
Madam Chair,
Yes, sir.
quick question, and maybe Ms. Farrell or somebody. We're talking about attendance, correct? Or we're talking about attendance and grades?
This is attendance.
About attendance.
Oh, so we're only talking about attendance and not necessarily grade when the assignments due. We're just talking about attendance at the particular school classroom settings. And it sounds like we're getting on a tangent talking about grades and when homework assignments due. Am I missing something someplace?
No, I mean, what we're talking about is, do you get credit for the assignment for just, do you get credit for attendance by just turning an assignment in, or do you get a credit for attendance by turning in an assignment by a certain date?
So what I'm hearing is we're talking about attendance and assignments.
No,
Yeah.
this particular policy is purely focused on attendance.
That's what I thought. So why we got assignments associated with the policy that's doing attendance?
Because it's the first item.
The state board expanded the definition of attending class to include turning in an assignment.
Oh, is that a part of the policy?
First item.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, Mr. Sharp, this is based on the state board's emergency policy regarding attendance to just basically, it has to do only with attendance on remote instruction days. So it doesn't have to do with attendance when students are regularly attending classes in the school building.
Okay.
But I think for clarification is, when it says turning in those assignments, this policy doesn't speak to how the assignments are graded or what percentage they get of completion. This just purely relates to when those assignments, if those assignments are turned in within a certain time frame, that the student gets credit for attendance, even if that student on those remote learning days did not check into a Zoom, they did not make a phone call to have two-way communication with the teacher, that if at some point in time that day or within the time frame given, they turned in their assignment, then they get credit for attending class on that day.
And go ahead, Bill.
And that's at the discretion of the admin at that school, correct?
On which part?
What Mr. Farrell just said.
About the time frame?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. As I said earlier, I'm pretty certain that the high schools, middle schools, the different grade levels try to work within having about the same time frame of when work was due.
I guess
that may not be absolutely correct. At the end of it, the principal and his staff establishes what their time frame is.
And that's what I mean. The LEA has a responsibility to establish it. If we want to change that, then we need to set a motion to change that. But right now, that's the way it reads.
I wanted to speak real quick, Madam Chairman.
Yes, ma'am.
Sorry, I'm having my internet is breaking up, I think. But the schools do need some autonomy. We need to remember that because they function so differently, and the fact that, and especially at the different grade levels. So we're going to need to allow them to make some of those decisions. And that's even if there's, I think we need to leave a little wiggle room. And we also have to remember we're talking about students and we're talking about children, and they're going through the same difficulties, if not more than we are. So if we go and set these parameters and they can't work outside of those, we're going to have some more issues than we already face, because I can only speak for myself, are hearing the difficulties that they're already having in completing assignments. We have to consider internet connection. We have to consider parents not being home. We have to consider all those things before we start to set up these I guess, restrictions on when they can have things done. I think that it's best to leave that autonomy to the school and the principal and even the teachers. So that's just coming from me, having worked.
Who is that talking? I didn't catch the voice.
Thomas Bullock.
Oh, okay. I didn't catch the voice. Okay.
I'm sorry. Yeah. And
that makes sense. But then I have another question, because I definitely don't think we need to confine the teacher or the principal with any more rules than we have to.
Mm-hmm.
But my my problem with this, well, my concern with this is not a problem, it's a concern, is what complete their daily assignments, either online or offline, actually mean. How are we using that today? Does that mean you give me an assignment and you say that I need to have that assignment done within 5 days? And in order for me to be counted present, but if I don't do it within that 5 days, am I considered not present, even though I will do the work probably on the 6th day or the 8th day, whatever? I'm just questioning for clarification, really.
Well, it's not.
How are we doing that now? Does anybody know?
You're not.
So
That's the problem, Miss Bullock.
No, it's being done. I think so you have it's almost like a way to kind of to give the children options. And I can say that as a parent as well. When my children's been absent, so if they have a doctor's appointment and they're not on Zoom that day, then they have the option to complete a daily assignment if they have one. They may not have a daily assignment for one teacher for that day. Then I, as a parent, all I need to do is communicate with the teacher. All I have to say, I send an email and I say, Nyla will not be at school on her Zoom today. She will complete all assignments for her week, just as she normally does. And she's counted present for that. Now, what happens after that, if you have students who never show up and who never communicate and who don't turn in work, they're counted absent regardless.
Right.
Now, however, let's say if that school or that teacher that has the 5-day or 7-day policy, on the 8th day, they're still absent, but they may get that reduced credit for the assignment. So that means I can't get an 80, but I can get a 50. 50 is better than 0. This depends on, if they have that, they may have a 10-point off daily for an assignment. That depends on the teacher. Now, it's almost, you're going to penalize them twice if they actually do the work and they still don't get credit and they're not counted present. So they lose their attendance for that day, but even if they still turn it in, they can actually get something, some form of a grade. So rather than being counted absent and receiving a 0, they'll just be counted absent, but they will have the ability to kind of make it up later. Now, that's very similar to what we do in-person school, where you may have been absent that day, but you do have a chance to make it up. So I think that's fair, instead of penalizing them twice, where they get a 0 and they're absent. So as a teacher, when you're going through, you it's really difficult to make up 0s as a student. So you kind of give them the chance to get their work done, as well as still holding them accountable for being present or not being there.
Evelyn, can I add to it?
Yes.
So I understand that we give credit for the work when it's graded in there, but the concern I have is we've been in school for just a little over 3 months now, and we still have numerous students that have not submitted any work. So I just think I just ask that the committee look at this policy. We're just telling them, turn your assignment in, but we're not telling them when. We're 3 months in and these kids have done no work. That needs to be addressed.
Well, I think those students who haven't done work, their grades reflect that. And I'm just saying that as a teacher who has students contact her.
Not if we're going to grade it 4 or 5 months later. And they're giving full credit in some of the schools. I think we have to.
I don't know that that's happening. We would need to see that data. I want to see that actually, because I know a lot of teachers, and I know teachers that would not accept that. So I don't know. That's difficult to say.
Madam Chair?
Yes, sir.
There's a lot of dialogue going on regarding this policy, and I think that, as Bill Sharp a member of the policy committee. I think this needs to be an offline discussion because there's Chris brings some valid points to what he's saying, and Mrs. Rhonda Bullock brings some as well. And I've noticed from being from the private sector where people that work for me have many concerns about how they can do these things. We don't have parents like Ms. Bullock who can do all this stuff that she's doing. When I got people that's working midnight shifts, that getting off at 2 in the morning or going into work at 7 o'clock, there's a lot of different sort of activity that's involved with it. So I think this deserves more conversation than what we can give it right now.
I think what has happened during this conversation is that we've gone from what the policy actually is addressing, and we've added in another caveat to the discussion.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
And I think, I'm sorry?
I just said yes, ma'am, and that was the point I made earlier. What's the topic?
I think we need to go back and look at the policy, this particular policy, because it has absolutely nothing to do with the end grade. It has everything to do with whether the student is counted present for that day or not. And so to satisfy that discussion, that piece of this policy, I think that if you all think it's a good idea, if we just added in there something to the effect about a designated time frame that the student will be counted present is all that's needed.
That's exactly what I was hitting at, Miss Bullock. You're spot on. I'm not looking at the grades. I'm looking at the attendance, and what I'm looking for is that we come up with a policy that's consistent. Every elementary school should be doing the same thing. Every middle should be the same thing. It shouldn't be these two schools are given a week. These two schools are given 3 weeks. We need to be consistent as a board, district-wide.
All right. And what is there now? The policy, the statement now reads, to be counted present during remote instruction days, students must either, 1, complete their daily assignments either online or offline within a designated time frame. That satisfies, for me, what I'm looking for in this policy to count a student present.
There's still no school-wide consistency with time frame. One school, one could do a week, school 2 could do 2 weeks. It's no consistency.
And that's fine. That's fine.
You have to consider the differences in these schools. These schools are not all the same. They have very different, very diverse populations. You can't really just blanket everything. There are a lot of things. I think all of the other wording is fine, and having those options as a board works. But to blanket that part of it, for me, knowing the difference, there are major differences between the population at Red Oak and the population at Williford. And we have to do what the principal who is in that building with hands on those students thinks works best for those students. That's my issue. I agree with you, Chris, when you say, we can have something in there that says, there is a designated time, but I don't think that we should try to come up with that number.
But I think if we were throw to remote learning out, if they were in the classroom, that expectation would be set there. I understand there's a lot of different diversity, a lot of differences, and I think we can take that into effect. But when you leave it as a designated time frame, that is you just open Pandora's box. I think as a board, we should set some type of guideline that says, 1 day, 2 day, 10 days, 1,000 days, whatever, but it just needs to be consistency across the district.
But Chris, think of this. It depends upon what the assignment is. And each class a fifth grade class does not have the exact same project. So therefore, project A may take 3 days.
I think you missed my point, Miss Bullock. I understand, you've got math work, English work, science work, but I still think we need to have it that says you've got to have this work turned in by a week before the end of the grading period or whatever, and that needs to be consistent within every school. I'm not asking everybody to do all their homework every night. I understand we can't do that, but just my food for thought. I'm done.
All right, any more discussion? I think the way it reads now talks about in more definite terms about the daily attendance of the student.
Ms. Bullock?
Yes.
I agree. I like it has to be done in the designated time frame, and whether that's set by the teacher, the principal, whether that's set by Mr. Thompson, kind of on a district-wide level, let's let them do it.
Okay. Any other questions or discussion?
Ms. Bullock, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Good afternoon. This is Reggie Silver. I've been sort of listening in on the conversation regarding this. I'll make a quick statement. I understand the issues that the students very well could have trying to get online or Zoom or whatever. I think it's important to be consistent across the board. I do understand Ms. Bullock's point. All schools are not the same. And I guess we have to treat them based upon the school and the population. All those kinds of things should go into effect. But I think we do have to have something that we can fall back on as a board. It would be nice if we could have everything consistent. But the truth of the matter is that might not be possible based upon the fact of where we are now in the pandemic and what is transpiring. It probably would be a good idea for the administrations from the various schools to talk about this, to make suggestions to the board, and we go along with those suggestions or kind of look at them and tweak them or do whatever necessary to make it flow consistently. I think consistency is very important in what we're doing here. But also by the same token, when we can't be consistent, we have to look at what works best for our students.
And maybe and just to kind of piggyback on what you're saying, I agree. And I wouldn't want to not have that wording now that we've discussed it, but maybe if we have our principals discuss and kind of designate that time rather than have us do it. I think that would kind of satisfy everyone if we had the principals come together and say, okay, let's move in this direction. Let's say 7 days or let's say 8 days, whatever it is. But I think that we need someone more on a ground level to make that decision. And I think that would satisfy everyone.
I think that we can talk about them, but I think
the
principals are doing the groundwork, and I think they probably could make the better decision or the better recommendation. Because we're not there. We're not at the schools. I think each principal has a good feel for his school to know exactly what works best. And I think that it's okay to give additional days, but just like being in school, after a certain time, if your stuff is not in, it doesn't count. So we got to consider all those things as well, from my perspective.
Can you all hear me? Ms. Bullock?
I'm sorry, go ahead, whoever.
Mr. Farrell.
Can you all hear me?
Yes, sir.
I think it's, first I would like to note that our leadership did have this conversation with the principals.
Okay.
The fact, because when this first came out from the Department of Public Instruction, we sat down with the principals, we went through this and discussion. And so the principals within their grade levels talked about some possible timeframes during that time. And I'm not sure that every grade level is doing 2 weeks or 5 days, but I do know that was a discussion. and there tried to be some consistency, but also allowing principals the freedom to do what they believe were best for the students in their school. And we have to take into account that this particular part was added to this policy because of COVID-19.
Right.
Right.
And if you look at the number of students who we have who are not consistently showing up for school, if we did not put some things in place to try to mitigate some of that attendance, then we, at the end of the school year, we're going to lose a whole lot of students.
Mhm.
And as an individual who served as a high school principal for 11 years, who served as a building level administrator for 16 years, I just think it is imperative in a pandemic that we allow principals the flexibility to make the decisions that they need to make that they believe is in the best interest of their students.
And I agree with that. I don't see that the phrase within a designated time frame. It doesn't matter to me what that time frame is, whether it's a week, 10 days, 20 days, even. I just think it needs to have that prerequisite to it, but I'm not saying you got to have every class, every fifth grade class got to have the same time. Every school's got to have the same time frame for every lesson. That's not what I'm saying at all.
I agree.
Madam Chair,
Yes, sir.
if I may,
Yes, sir.
I think we can sit on this thing and talk about it for the rest of the night.
And
We
it
do
was
have an
still,
agenda. Yeah, we do have an agenda to follow. And basically, if we just stay on task, what we say we're supposed to be hitting, the concerns that
we lost.
and some others that have in that process, I think they need to be addressed separately. And then maybe they come back and share with the committee what their findings. It sounds to me Mr. Ferris already did his due diligence, which I assume they had, or they would have never presented to the board. So if they got concerns regarding that, then they should address that with the superintendent and then come back to the policy committee to make any recommendations or changes.
Well, what I would suggest is that it seems to me that they've already done their due diligence.
Yes, ma'am.
And what I would suggest would be that because we are having so much discussion on this particular policy, that this particular policy we vote on separately from the other ones. And I have no issue with that. If I could get a motion for this policy and see where the committee stands on recommending that we approve the policy or not recommending and doing more work, it depends upon how the committee votes. So
would you like that now, or are you going to wait till the end?
Well, I would suggest we wait until we finish, because there may be another policy that would follow under that same condition. So let's go through all of them, and I'll make a note so that when we do vote on what we're recommending, we vote on this policy 4400 alone.
That's right. Thank you, Ms.
Would that work?
Yes, ma'am.
All right, then let's move on to policy 5020.
Actually, if you don't mind, I'm going to skip down to 7510, the leave policy, because Ms. Wallace has got to go to another meeting.
Okay.
Okay, so we've got 7510 leave. Ms. Wallace, if you want to talk through the changes to this policy.
Yes, ma'am. Can you pull it up for me, please?
Yep. there.
I don't see it, Chris. Is it up?
It's up.
It's not showing on my screen. Okay, I have it in another area. I still see the attendance one.
It's up. I see.
Do you see the leave policy, Evelyn?
Yes, I see it. Leave 7510. I see it.
Okay.
That's fine. I'll pull it. I have it in another area. It's still showing the other policy
Okay.
that you all just discussed on my end. 7510, which is the leave one. There is only one change to this policy, and it's a temporary addition, and it focuses on staff leave. And it pretty much states, in order to secure the health and safety of school system students and employees during the COVID-19 pandemic, all employees are required to provide a health certificate from a medical professional as a condition of returning to work following isolation due to COVID-19 symptoms or exposure. This temporary requirement shall remain in effect for the remainder of the 2021 school year or until repealed by the board, whichever occurs first.
Are there questions? Thank you.
I'm good.
All right. Thank
The
you. Next policy, Chris.
the next policy we have is policy 5020, visitors to the schools. And this one also has temporary changes to it related to COVID-19. Just to highlight a couple of them, this one has quite a bit more language in it, but essentially it gives schools the opportunity to engage parents in meetings and things like that through virtual means, or encourages that to minimize the number of non-essential visitors allowed in the school building, just to maintain safety. So it does specify that parents still have the right to access administration or school faculty. They can come into the lobby or the front office area or make an appointment for a meeting, but keeping those meetings to a minimum. It also does add that school employees will conduct symptom screenings for any person entering the building as required by the Department of Health and Human Services, which is something that we're doing for both employees and visitors and students.
Other questions? Next policy.
Okay, the next policy is policy 5030, community use of facilities, and we have Mr. Davis here to talk through those changes.
Okay, this is a temporary restriction that gives the school system cover for not renting any of their facilities at this time due to the COVID epidemic. And this temporary restriction shall remain in effect until repealed by the board or until the applicable guidance from DHHS is rescinded, whichever comes first.
Are there questions?
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Sharp?
Mr. Davis, can you
Yes.
hear me okay?
Yes.
Now, what about those situations where we have a commitment with the county? Is that applicable to that as well?
Yes, that's exactly right. None of the county uses any of our facilities at this time. It says in the verbiage here also issues regarding parties' contractual obligations under long-term leases is referred to the board attorney under those circumstances.
All right, I understand that, but there have been occasions, there are occasions that we've had a mutual consent or agreement with the county with the use of our facilities. So they are, I know they are, but I just want to make sure that they know that applies to them as well.
Yes, that is correct. And I think the only people who have used, I know during the election, but that was general statutes where we weren't able to change a polling site.
Right.
So do the county still have parks and recs?
Yes, but they're not using any of our indoor facilities at this time.
Yeah, Mr. Davis, if I may, I have reached out to both the Rocky Mount Parks and Rec Department as well as the Nash County Parks and Rec Department.
Hold up. What is this on Mr. Sharp's screen?
What do you see?
Well, all right, it's changed now. Okay, never mind. I thought somebody had hacked it.
No, ma'am. My video got turned on instead of off. So I'm sorry. Oh Lordy.
Moving right along.
Thank you, Ms. Bull.
Both of the Parks and Rec departments know that the indoor facilities are not available at this time. And we won't consider their use of the indoor facilities until at a minimum we've got our students fully in the building. They are, however, using outdoor facilities. So they have been approved to use the ball fields, I think at Spring Hope and at Middlesex.
And that was my point.
Yeah, but not indoor facilities.
So, Mr. Davis, are you aware of that?
Yes, I am aware of that.
Okay.
I was referring to any of our indoor facilities.
Okay. Well, I was referring to all of our facilities.
Right.
So they do have access to outdoor facilities.
Yes, at this time they do.
So is that spelled out inside this temporary restriction?
I don't see where it spells out. It just says our facilities, whether or not they want to make a change on indoor or outdoor.
You got to specify, because facility means all of it.
Lindsay, do we need to reword this?
Hang on a second. I'm looking at it right now because the thing that I'm trying to, and I'm looking at the rest of the policy because I'm not entirely sure that this is necessarily going to apply to long-term contracts that the school board has with the county. So I think that's why there's this carve out here that say issues regarding the parties' contractual obligations under long-term leases will be referred to the board attorneys. I think that to me reads as an exception to this.
And Lindsay, that's great, but we have had issues in the past regarding these specific things. Mm-hmm. So I just want to make sure we're clear on what we're defining as facilities. And because what I wouldn't like to hear down the road is someone else saying, well, the county's using this, why can't we use this?
But even with the county, if they were to use it, they are still limited as to how many people they can have at any given.
Ms. Bullock, you tapped on something.
Huh?
You tapped into something.
But I mean, that's what would be the concern with as long as there are restrictions as to how many people can be in a group outside. There was no restriction, but there are restrictions now.
Right.
So
where's that spelled out here?
It tells you, to me, when it says issues regarding contractual obligations should be referred to the board attorney. At that juncture, the board attorney should be able to ascertain whether that particular activity would fall under the confines of the law or not.
I agree with you. I'm just saying what you got.
I think it's self-explanatory. I don't think we need to be looking for
Okay, I'm good with it.
There.
I'm good with it.
That's how I think about it.
I just want to bring it up, Ms. Bullock. As long as we're in,
and it's good that you did. Any more questions? Are we okay? Are we good?
I'm good with it.
All right. Next policy.
So the next policy we have is safety and student transportation services. Policy 6305, and I believe we have Brian Whitkey with us to talk through these temporary requirements as well.
Good evening. The changes that are proposed are related to COVID-19, and it says that we will follow the recommendations put in place by North Carolina DHHS until the restrictions are lifted from the state level. And that's currently what we're doing now and plan to do so until we are set free. Any questions?
Are there questions for Brian? If not, the last policy, Chris, 7335.
Employee use of social media. So this one is not a temporary change. It's similar to the communication, the employee student policy that Sheila Wallace shared, where it added to the list of social media platforms, video conferencing platforms. So this policy talks about what's allowed, and it just makes the policy in alignment with the HR policy related to staff and student relations.
Are there questions? All right. Then we, with a series of policies that we have, let's vote first on policy 4400, attendance. Is there a motion that we recommend to the full board approval of the policy with the inclusion of within a designated time frame?
So moved.
Second.
Was that Lank who made the motion?
Yes, ma'am.
Moved
And
by
Bill,
Lank, seconded by
Bill Sharp.
Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Who was that?
Bill Sharp says aye.
Reggie Silver. Mr. Silver? Mr. Dunton?
I vote aye.
I say aye. Mr. Bissett, I think you're on this committee, aren't you?
No, Dean is.
Yes,
Dean.
I'm online. I'm just listening. I don't know that I'm a voting member of the committee.
If you're on the committee, and I think you are you on the committee?
No, ma'am, he's not.
I don't have my committee list in front of me.
No, ma'am, I'm not a committee member.
All right.
Dean is, but not Chris.
All right. So,
Mr. Bullock, you get my
Mr.
vote?
Sharp, wait a minute, Mr. Sharp.
Yes,
Mr.
aye.
Scott, Mr. Silver.
Yes.
And I vote yes. So the motion carries.
And Lank Dunton as well.
Yeah. It was 4 of the 5. Okay. So the motion carries. Now the other policies, let's see, policy 1510/4200/7270. 2120, 2121, 3,000, 3102, 3300, 4001, 4040/7310, 3020, 5020, excuse me, 5030, 6305, 7335, and 7510, is it? Got my papers mixed up.
Yes.
7510. Is there a motion that we recommend to the full board approval of these policies?
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Mr. Sharp, seconded by Mr. Silver, that we recommend to the full board approval of the policies as presented. Is there any discussion?
Ms. Bullock,
Yes, sir.
my only discussion, and this might not be relevant, do any of these not need to sit for 30 days? I mean, because of the COVID nature, should we move forward quickly on some of these or just standard procedure?
You know, that's a good question, Lane. Chris?
Yes. I think that's a good recommendation, actually.
So then we need to, all of these though, pertain to changes made by COVID, conditions, do they not?
They do. There were a couple that were not temporary changes, but the changes were related to the video conferencing platform, which is related to COVID. So,
Okay. So
yeah.
then, we add to that, motion that we recommend that these policies not lay on the table for 30 days? That we present them, I know what I mean to say, that we present them for immediate approval.
If not, I'll make a third motion that we.
I'll agree with that.
We could actually add it to the motion on the table, I think. Can we not, Lindsay?
Yeah, but I think somebody needs to I think we need to actually move to add it to the motion on the table, or, you know.
All right, Mr. Sharp, you made the motion.
Yes,
Can we add to your motion that we ask for immediate approval of these policies?
Yes, ma'am. Madam Chair, I move that we accept these with immediate approval of these policies.
And Lank?
Second it.
Reggie,
Yes.
do you second that motion?
Yes, I do.
All right, thank you. It's been
You're welcome.
moved, properly seconded, that we recommend to the full board approval of the policies listed, and that we waive the laying on the table for 30 days. Is there any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Bill Sharp, aye.
Reggie
Evelyn
Silver,
Bullock.
aye.
Hank Dutton, aye.
Opposed, no. Motion carried. Thank you all. That concludes our meeting. Thank you for your participation. And if there's nothing more to claim our attention, I declare the meeting adjourned.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank y'all.
Thank you. Good night, everyone.
Have a good evening. See, is that your little girl?
Yes, it is my